Oh, yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's program. As people are filing into the room here, I'll just kick us off with a little introduction. My name is Sarah Bryant, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at dbaPlatform, where it's our mission to get you found. We love to talk about all things local, and you're here because you know how important it is in this niche. We used to call it a niche, but more and more search is local. And today we have a special program where we're going to be talking about how to optimize not only business profiles, but some of the platforms like Google Advertising. We've been working a lot with inventory, and the whole network of local is changing. And we get a lot of questions, especially in the automotive space, because we do a lot of work with you guys that are agencies or dealerships that have locations with inventory. And so today we have kind of a different platform that we're going to do for our webinar. We have different hosts and guests today because we want to really have a specific discussion about something that's cropping up in these partnerships and kind of different ways to look at search, especially for your Google business platform. So before we get started, just make sure that you locate in your Zoom controls the Q&A box. That's where you're going to want to drop any questions that you might have for the conversation today for our panelists. Now, putting your questions in there, we may stop and answer them along the way. We may take a little time at the end, but feel free to put your questions in and we'll get to them as we can. Our first guest that we have today, as we talk about Waze for dealerships, which, if you're familiar with Waze, it's one of the navigation apps. And I know Warren and Chris are going to talk a lot about how this all fits in with everything that you're doing currently. But Warren comes to us. He's account manager at Waze based in New York. And then I don't know if you recognize this other face, Chris Lydle, who's with us today. He's the CEO at dbaPlatform. And although Chris is like, he goes and speaks at events, he's always on platforms, he's constantly doing thought leadership around the world. It's kind of a special treat to get him to come to our webinar. And he cleared his schedule today because he wanted to come and talk about some things that are up and coming. Now, Chris brings more than 25 years of digital experience to this endeavor. Before being with DBA, he actually worked at Google itself, and he has some really interesting stories for those of you who would love to kind of peek behind the curtain and see what's going on at Google. Most recently, he was the global lead of local shopping at Google, and that's sort of where we met him. He was doing some really creative, innovative things at Google, putting together networks of people and sort of seeing these little opportunities that Google couldn't take advantage of, but dbaPlatform was just in the right position to be able to put these together. I like to think of Chris as kind of the Zapier integration for people and ideas, because he's like, he can kind of see where things are. And if you know that quote from Wayne Gretzky, he says, you don't want to skate to where the puck is, you want to skate to where the puck is going. And that's where Chris is always thinking. So I think he's going to spend a little time today explaining, what we're seeing in this niche, specifically for automotive, the work that we've been doing in inventory, and how this all comes together with partners like Waze. And Chris, I'll let you speak to the rest of that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that very kind intro, sir. I appreciate it. Very excited to be with you all today. Super excited to have Warren here from our friends at Waze. As Sarah mentioned, I did spend 10 years at Google and in a variety of business development roles, and I was often the guy that would come in for executive summits out of Mountain View. And one thing I would hear all the time from executives, which is, I want to know what I don't know. Right? Google is this, huge sprawling enterprise. They have all these products. I know they're important and that I need to be on the train with what they're up to, but it's hard for me to navigate it. And the truth of it is, I used to say this all the time, which is there's nobody at Google, including Sundar, who actually knows everything that Google has. There just isn't. It's too much. And then likewise, there's certainly nobody at Google who knows all the details of all the things that Google is offering, right? And as a result, a lot of times folks are in the dark about a lot of the great things that Google is doing. And and I can say this now that I'm not at Google, but ironically, Google isn't always the best marketing company, meaning that they're great at helping you market, but they're not always the best at marketing their own solutions. And again, Warren, I can say that now because I'm not within the company boundaries. But that's where DBA really comes in, right? And I think there's a great opportunity for us to collaborate with our partners. We work with in the auto space, we work with a bunch of the top agencies and top dealerships, and being able to be your trusted partner to help you see the best opportunities to work with Google. And as you know, we've done a bunch with vehicle listing ads, we've done a bunch with cars for sale. Like, close your ears, Warren. We're actually doing some great stuff with Microsoft as well. But Waze is a really critical part of that ecosystem as well. And when you think about all these various advertising formats, they all bring different strengths and weaknesses, and but together they're a complete toolkit for helping drive more business to your dealership or to the dealership of the companies that you support, or the locations of dealerships that you support. Excuse me. And I think we're all very excited about what's going on with Carvana, except for the folks at Carvana. It's been an exciting year for auto advertising, despite the fact that inventory levels have been extremely low. And we know that dealers have not had much trouble selling the inventory they have. If Carvana really ends up not making it, there's going to be a lot of auto inventory available. And already we're starting to see some changes in that as well. So, folks have been really engaged in the ad front in 2022, but I think as inventory comes back available, it's going to become more competitive, and all the more reason why you want to be able to take advantage of all the great opportunities that Google can bring you. Waze is a fantastic product. I think almost all of us have used it as a consumer at one point or another. It's got a very almost zealous user base that really takes a lot of pride in being Wazers. And they have a very unique ad proposition. So with that, I'm going to stop yammering and let Warren get started. And again, we'll be looking for any questions you all might have along the way.
Hey, thank you so much, Chris. And I also want to thank everyone for joining, because if you're like me, you're probably behind on your holiday shopping, and this is valuable lockdown time. I know you're all busy. So I promise this will be informative for sure, but we'll keep it surgical and sweet. And with that said, I'm going to get into our roadmap for today. You might be familiar with Waze, and even if you're an expert, sometimes the dealers that you're talking to maybe they're a little old school. Perhaps they don't even have a navigation app. I'm going to give you the quick elevator pitch to remind them of why we're important, why we make sense. Secondly, what are we learning about the holiday season on Waze? What is some higher level Google Insights and data that I can relay to you guys to propel you into the new year? And then last but not least, what are dealerships doing right now on Waze? What's working? What have we found is most effective on a budgeting perspective? And looking forward to 2023, what are we expecting? So, Chris mentioned there's a lot of different elements within the Google Octopus umbrella, and Waze was acquired in 2013 as the only navigation app that is strictly focused on in-car marketing. This digital dark zone, this weird moment of consumer behavior where they're in, a critical moment of self-discovery. They're on the road, they're feeling engaged. How can they be influenced? And Larry Page said at the time, we like to look at acquisitions like a toothbrush. Hopefully you're using it more than once a day. And that holds true about Waze today. I'm actually, we're really proud to say that last month was our most active engagement months on record. I like to pretend like I had a lot to do that, a lot to do with that from the product side. Of course I didn't, but and I'll get into this on my next slide. But just for the month, we're seeing our highest engagement ever, almost 4x the time of spent on Google Maps, and roughly 31 million monthly users in the US and growing, which brings me on to the trend for the year, which is this is our best year on record, 140 plus million globally. I like comparing our 2019, pre-recessionary period or pre-pandemic period, whatever label you want to use there. We're up 16% higher miles driven overall, despite inflationary fears, recessionary fears, whatever you want to call it. People are using Waze. Wazers love us, and the future's bright. So what does our audience look like? Like who's using Waze? Well, we hit what I like to think is the trifecta of the American marketing market, which is we're richer, we're younger, and we're more educated than the average U.S. consumer. And some highlights that I pulled here in terms of car ownership that I think is interesting. Almost 70% own a 2015 car or older. The average car in the U.S. lasts 12 years. So if you do the math, there are a lot of Waze users who might be in the market for a new car. 40% are parents. And another close to 70% own more than one car. 12% are more likely to have spent $300 or more on auto parts and services over the past year. And you might be trying to balance out like, well, how does Waze fit compared to Google Maps and Apple Maps, the two most popular navigation apps? And I think it's helpful to remind people that, one, Google Maps is the only advertising platform, right? So now you're down to two. Between Google Maps and Waze is not a default app in an iPhone or an Android. So people are purposely downloading us to use Waze, right? So there's an intentionality behind drivers who are using Waze, and Wazers love using Waze. We save you 5 minutes. So what we find when we study Google Maps users, and not to slander, the corporate overlord who hopefully will never see this, but we're also more educated and affluent than the average Google Maps user and more tech savvy. But most importantly, we're also more likely to drive and travel at greater frequencies, which means more wear and tear on your car, and perhaps ready to make a new purchase.
So Warren, it's a really distinct audience from the Maps audience.
Yes.
Is there any overlap? Do you guys see any overlap between the Maps audience, or do people tend to get on one and stay on one?
Well, the overlap, Chris, is just because we're focused on driving only, you'll see an overlap between the tech savvy people who want to figure out, perhaps they're living in an urban environment and they're looking at Google Maps because they don't know how to cross over from Fifth Ave to First. Right. In my case. Or they're trying to quickly call a restaurant or a gym. Instead of going to that actual website, they'll just Google Map it and then click directly in, and then transfer over to the Waze app when they're hitting the road.
And Waze is for drivers.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
And so speaking of all these great highlights, there's a reason that auto brands trust us, and we have almost 6 million monthly route requests to auto brands. Of the dozen automakers in the U.S., we work across all the majors. Here are a few of our live advertising partners who are on the map. And I'm going to get into my next slide, but we've seen year-over-year growth to auto dealerships, and this is one of our core verticals at the company. So if you build out the ideal customer profile, you'd be hard pressed to find a better audience. And I laugh at this slide because it's so simple, but it's kind of why I love it. If you're using Waze, you're a driver. As I mentioned, the difference between Google Maps and Waze. So whether or not you're in the market for a car right now, perhaps you will be soon. And regardless of whether you need a new Toyota, a new Jeep, whatever it might be, your car is also going to need maintenance and service at some point. And that's also a bread and butter of what we do is going in and putting different seasonal highlights for oil changes and whatnot. And so what are the measurements that back up our audience support here? You'll find this in the appendix, and you guys will all receive this deck, but we have a 60% ad recall for auto ads, which is great. And then for foot traffic, we average about 18 cents per store visit. So you can cite this later, but our measurements match up our audience data. So let's talk about strategies we're seeing on Waze right now. What does it mean right now? How are we looking into 23? So yes, the summer is our busiest time on the map, but Q4 is mission critical for us. This is the busiest time period outside of the summer. Typically, we see 9% more total miles driven per month during this time versus the yearly average. So most of the dealerships that we're working with, they're aware of this, and as you guys are very aware, the dealership market is also cyclical. So is Waze to a certain extent in terms of driving patterns. But I'm going to get into more of that in a moment. What does that look like for dealerships specifically, not just like Waze total miles, but we have seen year-over-year growth in the dealership category for auto. Pre-pandemic, pre-2019, from 2022 to 2021, we've seen a 45% growth increase. From 2020 to 2022, 150%. So I've been talking about growth across all verticals. Here we're getting a bit more granular. The data supporting that this target audience works well. Mm-hmm. So what else is internal data showing us around the holidays? Well, looking at January through June this year, let's talk about travel trips, right? Travel trips on Waze were up compared to last year. We saw a 13% bump. And when you look back at the 2021 holiday season, these holiday trips were also up almost 30% as compared to the previous year. And we're expecting to see more growth here and a similar story. More miles are being driven, more travel trips are on the road, more wear on your tire. Nice to remind your clients for auto services, tune-ups, fuel changes, etc., that this is an important time of the year, not just for the new buys, but also for the auxiliary items, if you will. So this is reinforcing my last point, which is, travel trips are up. We continue to see growth in that area around the holidays. You can see that over 65% of Wazers will be traveling over 250 miles on the road, which is about the distance of driving from Chicago to Detroit. So, a lot of our partners are aware of this, and they're looking at how to market their dealerships for, again, as I said, not just the new buys, but also the auto parts and services.
So you guys are seeing a big lift in available inventory.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And now looking across all verticals, and not just auto, something that you guys are probably aware of, but maybe your inkling needs some proven data, is consumers are pretty smart right now, right? They're doing more research. They might be trepidatious because of inflationary habits. They're reading a lot of headlines. They've started shopping earlier than ever, right? We pulled this in October. We noticed that almost 20% of consumers were already shopping. They're beating me to the punch. I'm always a late shopper, so this doesn't apply to me at all. However, I expect that we're going to see these numbers continue to trail in the new year as well. Like I'm a little. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out, and I'll share it with you guys. But people have already been thinking about what they want to purchase. They're currently thinking about how they want to purchase in these times, and some more difficult macro trends. And I bring that up because competition's fierce, and your advertising for that competition, especially on the local front, is super important. And Waze can play a part in that. So here's a reason to be optimistic. I threw these macro terms out: inflation. Who knows what U.S. GDP looks like in the next year. But reasons to be optimistic. Wazers are more inflationary resistant than the average U.S. consumer. 55% of Wazers have a household income of 100K or more. So, as I said, more resistant than the typical household. The Fed's report this week on inflation showed that we were slowing faster than expected. Supply chain chip issues are starting to be gone. Knock on wood. Inventory levels at dealerships are starting to bounce back. Last week, GM CEO predicted new vehicle sales would expand from $15 million to $13 million this year. And as Chris mentioned with Carvana, the power of online sales is slowing. So we expect more manufacturers to lean on their dealers, right, for purchasing processes. And shopping local has its advantages for consumers, right? The Google data is showing us that consumers are thinking before their buying habits more than ever. They're also aware that perhaps going to their local dealership is a better opportunity for them, and we can play a valuable part of that process. So we know that all your dealerships are sprinting towards the end of their year goals with more attractive financing and perhaps cashback deals. Maybe they have to get rid of previous year models. So what does that look like in practice on Waze? What does marketing on Waze actually look like when executed? So marketing on our platform is pretty simple, and I'm not going to try to beat this into you too much because you can cross-reference our appendix, and by the way, my contact's going to be at the end of this, which you'll have. So if a question comes up and you feel too timid to hit Chris, you can just go straight to me. Just go straight to the source.
That's right. He'll give you the right answer anyway.
Exactly, and I might be a little speedier. Just kidding.
Not at all.
So we have 4 ad formats, and I'm going to take you through each one of them, but briefly. We have our arrow, our branded pin, our sponsored search, and our zero speed takeover. So I want you to imagine you're behind your car. You haven't entered anything yet, but you've pulled up the Waze app, right? Perhaps you're at your house, your apartment, or perhaps you're leaving work, right? Or a restaurant, but you haven't entered anything into Waze. Waze is going to nudge or show you or highlight the local businesses around you. And that's where you'll see that Honda ad right there. And similar to our pin, which I'm going to move on to next. Now you're driving, you're on the road. As you're passing by things, we're going to highlight some opportunities along your drive. We think it's important to get you from location to A to B in a faster time frame. That's why our users love Waze. But we're also going to show you what's around the area. And of all of our ad formats, I would say our pin is our most intuitive, integral ad unit because it doesn't look like an ad. It just looks like you're driving and something's been highlighted along your way. As for sponsored search, you guys are probably super familiar with search on the Google side. Similar to that, this is an added value. So as long as you're billing on one of our ad formats, you're going to get sponsored search. If you're running a coffee shop or a car dealership, if a user within your geolocation enters car dealership or coffee shop, you're going to be the first prompt. And lastly, that brings me to the zero speed takeover. This is our largest ad format. Imagine you're driving, you've left work, home, maybe you've pulled over to make a call, perhaps you're at a red light. Where does your eye go? Well, you're going to look at your GPS, your trusted Waze navigator, and make sure that you haven't taken the wrong turn. And our product, after 4 seconds of stop time, will serve you a targeted ad, which could be prompt you for a drive there. It could be a save for later. It could be a call now. Perhaps you call the dealership and schedule an appointment to talk to someone. And side note, we noticed that call now takeovers became very popular last year when it was much more rare to just show up to a dealership and say like, hey, this Volvo, I want to take it right off the lot. Let's go. So anyway, those are our 4 ad products. And now I'm going to kind of get into mixing and matching these ingredients.
Yeah, real quick, Mark. Mark from Tap Classifieds had a question about whether or not we could get some an inventory carousel in that zero speed takeover. And unfortunately, that is not available as of yet, but that's something that obviously we would love to see. But as of right now, it's like it's a display ad that you're gonna get there.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mark, though. So how are dealerships right now, mixing these ingredients for their strategy? So most of them are using all four of these, right? So they'll use an arrow so that while you head out, perhaps you're reminded of who your local dealers are. Your sponsored search will come with that. You'll have a zero speed takeover, and hopefully, you have a kick-ass ad team who has created a brand new visual that is reminding you of the fun season that you're in, and perhaps it's gift giving, or perhaps it's a used car, but some new creatives is always positive on our end. And perhaps you have a mixture of zero speed takeovers. Maybe there's one drive there, maybe the second's a save for later that will go to your Waze inbox, and once prompted, you'll then see a great deal. Which leads me,
real quick,
yeah.
Warren, I had a quick question about from Josh asking if the arrow on the pin could be the actual dealership logo or just the brand logo.
It can absolutely be the dealership logo.
Yep.
Just for continuity's sake, I've kept it as one brand, but I don't want to give up any of my dealerships. But yes, 100%.
Yeah, and to that point, we've done some work with on the retail side with what we're calling brand local that we're starting to roll out, which allows brands to advertise at their retail locations. And so in that case, we actually came up with pins that had both a ShopRite logo and a General Mills product logo in there as well. So it can get kind of tight, but we are excited about the opportunity for brands to participate, or OEMs as well, to be able to take over and drive traffic to their dealerships.
So speaking of, brand versus dealership, your takeover is a great opportunity to be more specific about your offering, your location, the details of your deal, right? Just because it's our largest ad format, this is a time when, on the PSO team, they're getting a lot of calls directly from, the largest auto brands saying, here are our newest takeovers. But just to visualize what that means in terms of engagement, takeovers are our most effective ad unit. We see them receive, anywhere from 3 to 4% or 4x higher navigation rates, more engagement. And, it's very rare for us to not have a dealership running a takeover, because they understand how effective it is to use in their media mix to increase engagement. So what does planning look like right now? What does planning look like into the new year? Well, December is our heavy up month for sure, right? So let's just take an example and say you had $1,000 to give to Waze as your, as your heavy up moment for the year. Perhaps November we were spending $750 or $500, right? We're trying to attract all of our last second shoppers, perhaps the ones that are a little less organized, or perhaps they're really organized because December is a great time to buy a car. So who knows? They're smarter than ever, right? And what are we advising, and what are we seeing as we push into the new year? Well, we're gonna then see January come down. Let's say 750 in this case. Perhaps we take off one of our ad units and mix our takeovers a little bit differently. And then with February, right, we're gonna decrease that spend as well, just because we don't push our clients in ways that don't make sense from an effectiveness standpoint. But that being said, looking out to the spring and the summer, we want to think of how can we slowly escalate to make sure that Q3, which is our strongest time on Waze, aka the summer, is also the most effective on your end. And we're all anxious and kind of lingering on cars right now, and that's what reporting is showing about consumer habits. So it's important to continue spend, but let's make sure that we're doing it conservatively and effectively. And this is when I kick it back to Chris.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, we've had some great experience collaborating with Warren's team on coming up with pilots, particularly on the retail front, and we got some great results. And so what we'd love to do is to be able to offer folks on this call the opportunity to work with DBA. We're going to offer a free managed pilot for up to 5 locations. And what we'll do there is, we'll collaborate with you to, come up with the design of that experiment. What is it that we're trying to test in what areas, right? The targeting, and Warren's team does a great job of helping us understand impression volume based on geography. So to help us really pick some locations that are going to be particularly impactful, but then also being able to set up a control group. So it's great to see the results from the locations where we're running the ads. But then also, like, if we have a control group of some similar places where we're not running the ads, how do we compare the results on that? And then finally, getting comprehensive results on this, so we can go back to you and say, all right, here's how we did, and go right back to that experiment design. We were trying to accomplish this, and here's where we ended up. So we'd be thrilled to work with you. For those of you that are existing customers, please reach out to your customer success manager. For those of you that are not current customers, please reach out to dbaPlatform.com/contact-sales, or you can just find the contact sales link on the homepage, and we'd love to hear from you. We are limiting this to agencies or dealer groups that manage 10 or more locations, but we'd be thrilled to bring our expertise to this because it's a great ad format, and we'd love to get you guys started with it. And I see Mark from TAP Classified has already signed up, so we got a winner so far. So very excited about that, and Mark, and we'll look forward to following up with you there.
And I'll just jump in. Thank you, Chris. Just quickly referencing some helpful slides in case you have some questions. And again, my contact will be at the end. So even if it's mentioned in here and you want to just reconfirm some details, hit me up. But here's just some more specifics about each ad unit, different sheets to visualize how this looks like in practice, different strategies, different creative mock-ups, studies that I've referenced, case studies, EV questions, pretty much the holy grail of appendixes for the auto industry is in here. So hopefully you'll find it useful. Just wanted to quickly toggle through that.
Yeah, and one of the great things about collaborating with Waze and Google broadly is that they have access to really unique information, information that you can't really find anywhere else. And so, Warren and team have been great partners as far as, collaborating with us and our agencies to make certain that we're getting great results. And, we're looking forward to expanding that. So I'm looking at, did anybody have any further questions or anything that we didn't cover?
I just, while people are putting their questions, last minute questions into the Q&A, I just wanted to remind everybody that the recording is available in the private Facebook group. And Warren had a lot of visuals and tools and things that you may want to revisit with your teams. So we'll make sure that we pop those actual collateral materials in also. Matt will put in the chat, if you're not currently on the Facebook group, he'll put that in, and he's standing by to let you in to that private group, and you can pick up your materials there.
Dynamite. Well, it looks like we did such a good job of answering everyone's questions along the way that there's none left over. So, thank you, Warren, for joining us today, and we'll look forward to having another session with you, as we get into the spring and planning again. But and thanks to all of our attendees, and happy holidays to all. And please do visit, dbaPlatform/contact sales, and we'll get a pilot going for this great ad product. Awesome. Thank you all.
See you soon.
Thank you.